working group. All of us are 20 percenters across Google who are interested in raising ag, also climate change. So this working group, now we majorly learn. We invite experts in this area to give us talk like you. Matt and my name is Charlie. I work in Google X team. Matt is the founder of Google Earth Engine. You might have heard that. 2 years ago, we co-founded this working group. Hey, Matt. I just working on the introduction. Also, we have Blake. He's also working Google Geo to help us organize this working group too. Now he's just driving his kids to school. He will be late to this meeting. This is an early meeting. Most of our members might not join this one, so we mostly record this meeting, and we can review it later. Mac,
is that all right? We record.
It's okay for us to record this.
Sure. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, we will only share internally. Yeah, we will only share internally. Since we have a very small group now, we may have a roundtable introduction from our side. I just introduced. Back to you, Matt.
Sure. Yeah. So as Charlie mentioned, I'm an engineering manager. I oversee the Google Earth Engine team as well as the Google Earth team and our environmental insights team that focuses on city level carbon and some other things here in the mapping related corner of Google. And like Charlie mentioned, I became interested in this space about the same time as him, right before the pandemic. And we founded a group to start learning more about regenerative agriculture. We had big dreams of spending a lot of time in the early months getting out on farms, meeting people in person, seeing the world. Those were promptly derailed by the pandemic. And so we shifted gears and spent our early days focusing on learning what we could from reading papers and watching lectures online and having a discussion group among ourselves, and then starting to bring in experts from a variety of institutions to come talk with us once we sort of reached a certain baseline level of competence in the topics so that we could carry on a useful conversation. And then we've been doing a little bit of prototyping and piloting of some very basic ideas, but still very much in a learning-oriented phase, trying to understand what really Google could do to help the world accelerate the movement towards regenerative agriculture for all of its various benefits. Do you want to do a quick roundtable of some other intros of folks who are here in person? Maybe self-organize in alphabetical order? Aaron?
You're right then. I always go first with that. Hey, my name is Aaron. I'm a developer relations engineer in Google Cloud. So building cool products to help developers use it and getting to do a few things, fun things in there, weave in cloud and geo to build useful solutions for the earth. Besides that, very active in the climate community here at Google, and just very passionate about regenerative agriculture, studying permaculture as well on the side. So always excited to find new ways we can help more of the world farm in a regenerative way.
Andrew?
Hi, I'm Andrew McGowan. I'm a computational agronomist on the mineral project at X. My background's in agronomy, soil science, and agricultural systems modeling. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Ella?
Sorry, I'm late. I am now in India and leading a small effort on using remote sensing for climate solutions in the global south.
Thank you. Chris? Chris, yeah, we have the roundtable introduction now.
Sorry, Charlie, could you repeat that?
Yes, we just have an introduction.
Oh, sorry.
Introduce yourself. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry I was late. So I'm Chris. I'm in London. I helped out a little bit on some of the earlier mineral work, along with Alex Wilson, who isn't on this call. I have quite a long-standing interest in sustainable agriculture and how, as we all do, of course, and how we here and in a wider sense can sort of help with that.
Thank you. Joanne?
Hi, and apologies also for being late. I'm Joanne. I'm an engineering director in charge of photogrammetry in the geo product area. And I'm interested in, so all of our work helps, well, it gets published in Google Earth where Matt works. And I'm interested in ways that orthorectification and just image processing might be able to help climate change and specifically regenerative agriculture.
Thank you. You guys?
Yeah, I work at coordinator team, but I've also been working with Forrest separately just to coordinate with him all the different initiatives he brings. So I'm glad that he's able to come here. Thank you.
Thank you. Dara?
Hi, my name's Zara. I work with Charlie and Andrew on the mineral team within X. My background is in working with smallholder agriculture and on the investing side, so I worked a lot in East and Southern Africa. I'm very excited to hear about what you all are working on.
Thank you. I will start the recording and turn to Palouse and Forrest.
Yeah, it is as good a region as it gets to do research. It's the largest grain growing region in North America. 10% of US grain production. There are 5 million acres of farmland. The reason why you probably haven't heard about the Palouse is because 90% of their production is being exported. Very fertile soils that have been highly degraded because of the chemical forms of production that have been used here. So introducing agroforestry here will greatly will make a great impact on this. It's really amazing how everyone is completely aware of the damage that has been done to their soils and how this is not sustainable moving forward. So it's in the southeast part of Washington and goes right across Idaho and Oregon into this triangle here. So we visited the Palouse, and we have a local, what we call champion, is the chief operating officer of Shepherd's Grain. Very engaged, assertive, wanting to change their condition. It's a co-op of 35 farmers, with an average size of 3,300 acres. So it's a significant group. They have 150,000 acres of farmland between them. So when we talked with them, we started out thinking about one demonstration farm, but we are now saying, no, let's do multiple demonstration farms. We will find out this coming Monday. We had a meeting this Monday with them to agree, yes, let's move forward. This coming Monday, we will find out how many demonstration farms we will have, how many farmers have signed up. We met with the food service operation from local universities. The Washington State University is represented there, which is amazing. They have a big agricultural department there. They're serving 10,000 meals a day, so that's a great customer. They're currently not sourcing local. Then we have, farmers markets, food hubs, an owner, a membership-owned co-op grocery store. That's amazing. So there's great interest in locally produced food that can be amplified. So we met with Washington State University, the agricultural department, and their researchers, with the Palouse Conservation District. We met with USDA Farm Research, with the county commissioner, with Washington State Extension. Everyone super interested and excited about doing something like this. And I think we will be well supported. I'm really optimistic about this. So the reason why we are picking several demonstration farms is because the Palouse has several microclimates. You can have a completely different climate on one side of the hill than the other when you think about soil, sun exposure and the amount of rain that comes into different areas here. So setting up several demonstration farms will allow us to customize towards specific microclimates. There's universal agreement that we need to have animals on the farm. So the design criteria that we have, high level agreed on with the farmers is agroforestry, silvopasture, using perennial grains, which have deeper root systems, and the integration of livestock. So the demonstration farms will be integrated into the existing farms, which is making it super easy to get going, because we don't have to worry about the equipment and labor and all of those things. So the farmers will put maybe 100 to 150 acres aside and develop this demonstration farm. If it works out for them, they can go right into the existing operation. Totally bottom up, when the farmers we talked with made it very clear, that we are going to get to decide what we're doing here, because we have to work it, and it's our money and it's our farm. So clearly, we'll bring ideas to you. You get to decide, which way you want to move forward with. So livestock integration. Every farmer we talked with, and these are large farmers. I mean, 3,300 acres average. There were some guys with 10,000, 12,000 acres in that group. Everyone's saying we need to put livestock on the field in order to really restore this soil. It won't work otherwise. But not every farmer is comfortable handling livestock. It's a completely different skill set, and it raises a lot of issues. So that is becoming a program step. We will bring in experts. We had some high-level discussions about what type of ruminants should we be using. I mean, what species cattle, for example, but also sheep and goats. Sheep and goats have different feeding patterns, and so they're actually very complementary to put on the ground there. But so those are decisions we'll have to make. And then options, may include to create a division within shepherd's grain to manage these ruminants. So this will become our very first discussion with these farmers is how do you want to handle your livestock here. So what are we trying to achieve with these demonstration farms? We want to regenerate soil, sequester carbon, restore soil microbiome. And that's really the last part here. Restoration of the soil microbiome is a really underappreciated point amongst commodity farmers at this point. Many of the efforts that you see is a reduction of harm. It's not a restoration of soil microbiome, because you have to get out of chemicals in order to really heal the microbiome and allow the biota in the soil to thrive. So we want to demonstrate rapid gains in net profits. The moment you get out of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer and all these pesticides, your profitability will jump. And we are going to do this by putting animals on the farm, but then also working with inoculants. So we're going to talk about this in a moment more. So it's peer-to-peer training, having a group of farmers. We told them the more the better, right? I mean, maybe 5, 6 or so, but the shepherd's grain, the COO, has agreed to go outside their co-op and see if they can solicit a few more farmers from within the region who would like to participate. It's a very collaborative group here. And so there's training and education that can spread into this entire region is really a very nice opportunity there. So we want to prove that we can increase the return on investment, and we want to develop systems structures, process structures that allow us to replicate this into other areas across the US and even international. Program impact, regeneration, right? So farm soil health, yes, that's water, biodiversity, important part, but also big focus on social environment, community resilience, farmer diversity, community cohesion. There is no way to create a truly regenerative environment without addressing the socioeconomic impacts of any of these changes that are being made, which is a huge gap at this point in how the industry thinks about what needs to be done. So we want this to be integrated to make sure that the community benefits from these changes. And then, of course, nutritional health environment. I mean, as you all know, 60% of the US population has a nutritional cost, a dietary costs issue, diabetes, obesity, cancers, heart disease, and so on. 40% of the US population have 2 or more of those conditions. You know, it's 80% of the US healthcare bill is basically caused by the food we grow, or the way we grow it. So we want to develop a blueprint for replication across the US. This whole systems approach, farm to fork blueprint, including missing pieces of local regional supply chain, proof of concept. And so we have been working on these ideas for years, actually. And so this is our first opportunity for proof of concept for, first of all, the innovations brokerage, but then also this whole systems design approach. So the proof of concept includes the financial metrics for the enterprises that need to be activated within the community, right? Because when we think about, on the one hand is the farmer, on the other hand is the consumer. In the middle is a supply chain that is not very conducive at this moment to link up these changes. Now, this is a huge curveball for much of the supply chain to change their sourcing strategies. And so it will require workarounds, it will require working within the system to help these changes to progress. And then really important, this is bottom up. This is starting with the farmer, bringing resources to the farmer, empowering the farmer, because that's where this has to happen. So I wanted to show here a map, a mind map that we developed within Kumu, and we have been very fortunate. We are linked up with Gene Bellinger, who is sort of a systems design guru, using this Kumu here. So when you think about, here's us, Planetary Care, right? We have our client here, who is Shepherd's Crane, who is developing demonstration farms, and we are bringing these resources to the demonstration farm. Shepherd's Crane needs resources above and beyond the demonstration farm because they need to anticipate capacities they will have to build, as these demonstration farms take root and expand their operation, as they go into the farm. So, for example, slaughterhouse capacity is a clear issue. The United States meat processing capacity has been severely damaged over the last 20, 30 years. That basically 4 companies control 80% of the market. We have been talking with farmers across the country. It doesn't matter, whether that's East Coast, West Coast. They have to book time in a slaughterhouse for a year out. And farmers who have grass-fed, high value, humanely treated, chemically free, hormone-free, but antibiotics-free meat, it gets lost in this process. So we need to have slaughterhouse capacity so we can get the full value of these animals to the farmer. And so that's a big component of this project here. Another thing here is bionutrients. Bionutrients is an emerging field that has a big promise to replace synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, which would be those 2 things. Slaughterhouse capacity, bionutrients are complete game changers if we can scale that in the US food market. So then we are looking at affiliated organizations. So on the one hand, we have the research institutes here that basically Washington State University, the Conservation District, Washington State Extension. So there's a number of local groups that we have identified already which we are looking to build relationships with. Then there is commercial entities, and Forest has been working in this field for quite a while to build relationships with potential partners, so we can then be the conduit for these groups to get to Shepherd's Grain. So this is the basic construct of innovations brokerage. But then also we want to have a big focus on community development. BIPOC, this is Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. Are going to be core focus. We can't really responsibly get into this community without paying attention to the indigenous communities. There's I think like 60 or so Indian tribes that are living within this larger region. So that's a big thing. The food hub, I've been trying to assist with food hubs, but these are basically like non-profit groups. 2/3 of our food hubs in the United States lose money. Their revenue is really maybe in $1 million or so. There is a lot of opportunity here to help because it's a systems approach that is required. I mean, food basically, you have to order ahead, you have to contract out with a farmer. So there's some really fundamental, rudimentary things missing in the way they operate. So we think we can help there. Local currency is in play. There are some really simple constructs to develop a local currency. My favorite one would be to work with SNAP benefits. The United States government spends $90 billion a year handing out food stamps. They go into a community and then Walmart pulls them right back out. So there's no local sourcing that's engaged with these funds. There's a program called Double Your Food Buck, where local donations double the value of SNAP, then put it on a debit card. Now you have a local currency, which you can limit to participating vendors for a range of products that are healthy and so on and so on. So that's going to be now a focal point, and I'm sort of personally really engaged and interested in making that work. So back to the presentation. So here is the high-level program management that we have laid out. And this is based on the conversations that we had with these farmers. And so we submitted this. It's now circulating in the Palouse, and hopefully stimulates enough interest to get more farmers signed up here. So the first thing, selection and design of demonstration farms. So on Monday, we're waiting with bated breath to find out how many farmers we get to work with. Our very first decision point will be how are we going to handle livestock. Yes, we know we need livestock in here not just soil restoration, but also from a financial standpoint. Meat processing capacity is going to be a big design project that we will handle now outside of working on the demonstration farms. Bionutrient inoculants. Forest has a big background in that area, and we will see what we can build, in local capacity, using waste products basically to create bionutrient teas and so on. Carbon markets, it's the Wild West right now. There's no clear focus yet, but the government is expected, USDA is expected to develop standards to regulate the market, at least on a voluntary basis, and do this. Shepherd's Grain has worked with one of these companies that are operating in this field, and they're working on the look back idea of paying farmers for past practices, because there's a big fairness issue between farmers who have done nothing but chemical operations and now convert and get money to do so, versus farmers who have done regenerative practices and are left out of these benefits. So there is a one-time look-back process that is being set up here to reward farmers for doing the right thing backwards. And then, of course, community outreach is important for us. And then demand aggregation. So this is where this innovations brokerage comes in. Now, our task is to provide market intelligence between what the farmer needs to grow, the range of options that the farmer has on the one hand to grow crops that are regenerative in nature. They may start working with legumes or perennial grains and things of that sort. And then going on the other side to where the demand is and work with caterers and but also food wholesalers, large companies like Nestle, Cargill, and say, what can you do to start shifting your demands to accommodate the need of these farmers. So that will become a work effort as soon as we identify what kind of products are coming at us. So here, invitation to Google X. You have to educate us on what you do and what you would be interested doing. But this is now a golden opportunity for testing a lot of your ideas and technology. And of course, do this in ways where you have exposure to millions of acres of farmland. Which, I mean, when you look at the Palouse, it's a very remote area. There are about just maybe 70,000 people living in there. The biggest city is 20,000 people. It's Moscow. It's on the Idaho side. Other communities are maybe 1,000, 2,000 people. A lot of smaller communities of farmers. So to get right into the middle of this and reach this very, I mean, it's almost like a perfect test case, right? Because you're undisturbed from many other influence factors. So you have to educate us on what it is that you would want to be doing here. So one last thing here on innovations brokerage. The idea originated in Holland, and there are research papers. If you go online and you type in agricultural innovations brokerage, you get a bunch of articles on why this is important and how it works. But it's a behind-the-scene mode, makes it a little challenging to get funding because it's not really fully understood. So we're trying to, also with this presentation, we're trying to explain why we're adding value, and how we're adding value to this process here. And also, there's clearly what research shows. We are promoting collective innovation, and we are preventing innovation failures, right? Because we are hosting the communication process around these innovations, and so that should offer a rationale for investment. And then, as innovation brokers, we have to be honest brokers. That means we are positioning ourselves as consultants, strategic consultants to Shepherd's Grain. They have to be able to completely trust us. So what we bring to them is something that we personally need to be convinced of is the right thing to do. And so we can't ever violate this because trust is really the only currency that we truly have. So with that, I'm going to give you the screen back. If I find out where you are, I think you're here. Okay, and stop presenting, and I'm going to turn.
Thank you. Yeah, we have Blake here. Blake, do you have a quick introduction, and we can go to you can help to the QA session.
Yeah. So what do you think?
It looks really interesting. Sorry, I was about 10 minutes late. There was a drop-off issue this morning. Thanks so much for presenting. So just to clarify it for myself, so we're talking about Eastern Washington and Western Idaho. That's the region you're working with here.
Yeah, it's right at the corner of Southeast Washington, bordering Oregon and Idaho, and actually it reaches across these 3 state lines.
Yeah. And you said that part of what you're trying to encourage is agroforestry. Did I catch that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. And so they are basically bringing the region back to what it used to be, before the intrusion of farming, chemical farming, and so on. And so, yeah, it's agroforestry and silvopasture, an important component here.
Yeah, and then just two more quick questions, and then maybe turn it over to the group. One question is what is, and I think I missed this because I was a little late. What is the primary crop that's being raised there now? Crops, and then 2, I recently have a friend who went to the Savannah Institute in, I think, Minnesota or somewhere around there, which is focused on agroforestry. And I'm wondering, are there other agroforestry groups around that you're communicating with, and when you're trying to pick the crops that would be most useful here?
So the primary crop is wheat. It's the largest wheat growing region in North America. But they're also doing a lot of legumes, peas and beans and that sort of thing. And we already met an agroforestry specialist at Washington State University. So while they're not doing it in this region, the know-how is present within Washington State. Huge advantage of having this big Washington State University right there with an extension attached to it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll turn it over to the group. Are there other questions?
I could ask a quick one. I mean, what I really love about this, you just talked about having this local farm example and really building from the community up, having neighbors learn from their neighbors and people they've known for so long. That's really how you build trust, as somebody you know is doing something. Did you borrow any of the learnings or collaborative approach or partnership ideas from other initiatives, or have you seen like a best case that we should be thinking about of how to structure some things like this as we think about what kind of collaborations and partnerships work? And I just want to hear from you. You made very intentional choices and how we can learn from that.
Well, we are connected with best practice across the country. So besides Shepherd's Grain, I'm the sector leader agriculture for Business Climate Leaders and Citizen Climate Lobby. I'm on the core team for the Sierra Club, Food and Ag Grassroots Network. So yeah, I'm connected with this, and Forrest has been working across, working with more companies who are in this field. So yeah, particularly in the community development part, there's some great projects across the country. And one of our objectives is to collect, and we already have, best practice examples and then bring them to the community and say, look what these guys are doing over there. You could be doing this here, kind of thing. And then there are a lot of NGOs like this. When you go online and you go double your food buck, for example, that's a very mature project that started somewhere on the East Coast. I forgot the state, and it's now in 35 states. Every farmers market does it, but not everyone has implemented it in the most efficient way. So yeah, it's wonderful examples now from individual small communities, which we like to collect and then just roll out, right? I mean, that's ready to go kind of stuff, absolutely.
That's really helpful. Yeah, the background was just, I love the local approach, and it sounds like what you have is these global kind of paradigms you can pull from and plug it in. So thank you so much.
I think
Joanne.
Please go ahead, Joanne.
Yeah, I've actually got several questions along the whole spectrum of, but let me start with the big one first. So first of all, I love the fact that you're addressing the entire supply chain and the economics Because obviously farmers, I mean, they're struggling. They need to be able to see profitability with these new practices. So you mentioned in one of your slides that you were working with the USDA, and we know that they spend billions subsidizing farmers for non-regenerative practices. What hope do you see of influencing that differently, of getting the USDA to start subsidizing regenerative agriculture practices, if any?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a big topic, and obviously I'm also working in the political field because we are a lobbying, Citizen Climate Lobby is a lobbying organization. We have over 200,000 members, but there are also other groups now. So the Sierra Club and the Associated Grassroots Network is launching a national campaign on the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill has attracted great attention because the insurance program, the crop insurance program, is a major problem in promoting these chemically intensive practices. There is the struggle, is that the industry is so vertically integrated and so highly specialized, that they need a commoditized, standardized product coming out of agriculture into it. And the idea that you develop regenerative practices implies that they would have to decentralize their supply chain, right? Because now you're dealing with different types. I mean, it may be wheat, but it's a different type of wheat. It's a perennial grain that may not fit into Subway sandwich bread, right? So, and so this level of specialization has created a bottleneck for innovation, and we need to find workarounds. So there is USDA. I was in a meeting last week with Secretary Vilsack, who is now the Secretary of Agriculture, and so they just got allocated $23 billion for discretionary funds that they can invest at their discretion, basically. And they're looking at demonstration projects. They're looking at funding a number of programs that are on the books but haven't been funded, for environmental restoration and so on. So there's $90 billion in the infrastructure bill that just passed. The bill that's currently in reconciliation, the Build Back Better bill, has $555 billion dedicated to climate change. The first 70 pages of that are agriculture. So there is money flowing in. The problem is that USDA is not staffed to handle that kind of flow. So predictably, they will be looking for turnkey projects that are significant enough to invest in, and that they are ready to go, kind of thing, right? So what we are wanting to do is strategically position ourselves. So Vilsack was saying that Q1 they will announce programs to be funded. Q2 they start accepting applications. By that time, we want to have a killer turnkey project that you just have to fund because it's just so good. You got to do it.
Oh, awesome! That sounds wonderful. And I really love the approach because it's a holistic approach, from the farmer itself through all the supply chain and markets. Next question is, you talked about replicating this model exponentially, which I agree is something we need to do. But we're seeing it's happening much sooner than anyone would have hoped. That climate change is actually causing conditions where, in California, we have extreme drought and water is now going to be much more expensive for the farmers. And in other parts of the country, we have flooding. And this same regenerative practices may need to be tweaked given the differences in water, whether too little or too much. Is that something that you've been exploring? And how do you plan on handling that as you replicate this?
Yeah, so we were actually doing a webinar on that issue, Farm to Fork Community Food Systems, and looking at the food system as a system indeed. And the whole point of regionalization, localization is you're dealing with unique soils, types of soils, conditions of soils, you're dealing with water, access to water, different climates, and then the socioeconomic structure and reality around all of this. So that's the whole point of having to decentralize and deal with these conditions. But in order to do that, it requires a bottom-up build. So the proof of concept that we are offering here is we went to the Palouse, we did a local assessment, we developed a local plan. And so then the Kumu map that I was showing explains how we are looking at process structures that need to be developed at the local level. And the simple concept is find people who are looking for doing what you're doing, right? So you don't want to work with a farmer trying to convince a farmer who doesn't want to be convinced. Is a waste of time. The same through is going into the supply chain and dealing with wholesalers or processors who don't want to engage. You're looking for people who want to work with you. And so this kind of Kumu mapping, this actually has been developed by PayPal, right? So they're using this kind of process mapping when they go into a new market to find actors who are interested in working with them, and they stitch together their supply chain in the process. So going into a community, you find, first of all, farmers wanting to work with you, and then you stitch, the aggregator, the processor, the logistics, and so on. You stitch that together to reach the market. So these are workaround structures. Unfortunately, that's how we have to start. But I think as soon as this gains traction, we will have companies roll into this space.
Wonderful. And last question, I'll stop hogging the question floor. So obviously there's funds coming online through the Build Back Better bill, et cetera. In order to replicate quickly, you're obviously going to need a lot of funding. Are you soliciting or attracting venture capital, or what sources of funding are you looking to accelerate this expansion?
So we actually had a conversation with Tom Chi about that, and 2 conversations, and yeah, so it's a challenge for us, right? Because the first question comes up, so what's the return, and what can you offer, and so on. Well, we offer brokerage services, and we need to get started. So we are currently struggling to get a ramp up. But we need to hear from you what you may be interested in on a project of that sort. What technology or data would be of interest to you, and help us understand how we can potentially integrate that.
Yeah, I made comments on like outside mineral. I think these are kind of confidential still. We try to help, say, use technology, remote sensing. If we can detect cover crop and tillage or no-till practice more accurately, when we encourage this kind of practice by some financing and other support, even from government support. This is just some idea. Also, can discuss with you and get your feedback too. Yeah, still we are early stage. That detection, yes, sometimes it's challenging too. Matt?
I was just going to maybe close with my usual question here. It sounds like there's a follow-up conversation perhaps worth having specifically with Mineral about whether they would be interested in projects in that area and of what sort. But I'm curious, while we have you here talking not just to Mineral, but to folks from Google and Alphabet as a whole, what would you like to see a big tech company do to help in this space? We have computing, we have engineering resources, we're not farmers for the most part, although there are certainly farmers here. What would you like to see Google do if you had a magic wand?
You know, one metric that is hugely important and of great interest to the public is the nutrient density of food. Because now everybody's catching on that the reason why we're so sick is because food is being grown with chemicals instead of a healthy microbiome, and how the microbiome of the soil is linked to our own gut microbiome, you know, and how this impacts our health. So proving that changing agricultural practices restores the nutrient density and value of food would be hugely important to promote the idea in the general public. And we need to convince the consumer to go along with this, right? And why is this important? And so this link to personal health would be amazingly helpful to establish.
So I think a number of us will probably have to start dropping off soon to run to our next meetings. Blake, do you want to close us out? And
yeah,
thank you so much.
and I think that I have a question. And if anybody needs to drop, please just go ahead and drop. And before people drop, thank you so much, Forrest and Klaus, for being here today. And I think I speak for everybody in saying that this was a really interesting conversation that we really appreciate it. So again, I think many people have dropped because they've got to get on in other meetings, but thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And if there are any questions for us, then reach out again and we'll be in touch. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to have you here. Yeah,
Thank you.
Bring the speakers. Yeah.